This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidou-Yuat. It's Wednesday, February 5th. This is Africa 54. The White House says the new travel ban that includes 4 African countries is vital to U.S. national security, but critics are questioning the rationale. We'll explain. Tanzanian opposition leader Zitto Kabwe talks about the country's deteriorating human rights conditions. And citizen scientists turn to technology to chronicle nature. U.S. President Donald Trump has added 6 countries to his latest travel ban. 4 of them are African countries. The White House says the move is vital to national security, but critics question the rationale as well as its impact on U.S. relations with Africa. VOA White House correspondent Patsy Widakuswara explains.
Nigeria is Africa's largest economy and most populous country. It's a U.S. anti-terrorism partner with a large diaspora residing in the United States. It's also among the 6 countries added to the Trump administration's latest travel ban, along with Eritrea, Myanmar, Kyrgyzstan, Tanzania, and Sudan.
You see what's going on in the world. Our country has to be safe.
The U.S. will stop issuing immigrant visas to Nigerians until the country improves security measures in issuing passports. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met with Nigeria's foreign minister Tuesday and said he is optimistic.
In the proclamation, President Trump highlighted Nigeria's importance as a strategic partner in the global fight against terrorism and recognized the government's commitment to improving information sharing with us.
Like Nigerians, most citizens of Eritrea, Myanmar, and Kyrgyzstan are also barred from obtaining immigrant visas, while citizens of Sudan and Tanzania cannot participate in the diversity visa program known as the Green Card Lottery. Nigerian Foreign Minister Jeffrey Onyema said he was blindsided by the ban, but pledged to improve national security information.
We're putting in place the architecture that will now make that the information and the data on that immediately available to the U.S. and all the member states and member countries of Interpol. And we hope to have that up and running, very soon.
Onyema acknowledged his country is dealing with security threats, including terrorist group Boko Haram, which has displaced millions of Nigerians. But there is little evidence the group is a threat to Americans. The ban does not apply to citizens from impacted countries who apply for tourist visas, prompting criticisms to the administration's rationale of ensuring security.
Temporary visitors are the ones with the capacity to create the problems they are afraid of. Somebody with a fixed address in Chicago, in New York, who with a place of employment is the least disposed to creating troubles because they will be caught.
Good morning. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi called the ban discrimination disguised as policy, a criticism shared by Danny Bahar from the Brookings Institution.
We have here an administration that has some very strong rhetoric against migrants that are, for the most part, fueled by false evidence, false facts.
Critics argue cutting immigration ties will weaken American global influence.
Immigrants with education is an aspect of soft diplomacy. They're your friends. Or do you want to use that money to pay for the establishment of more military bases, more intelligence, more policing? It's a choice that Washington, D.C. has to make.
The amended executive order, which takes effect February 21st, will also maintain restrictions on some citizens from Iran, Libya, Somalia, Syria, and Yemen, along with Venezuela and North Korea. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News at the White House.
Turning to East Africa now, a Human Rights Watch report on Tanzania paints a grim picture of democracy and freedom of expression. Human Rights Watch says since the election of President John Magufuli in December 2015, Tanzania has witnessed a marked decline in respect for freedom of expression, association, and assembly. The report cites increasing attacks on opposition members, journalists, and critics of the government by Tanzanian authorities. Now, for more insight on this story, I'm joined by Zitto Kabwe, a Tanzanian opposition politician and founder of the Alliance for Change and Transparency political party. Mr. Kabwe, welcome to Africa 54 and to VOA.
Thank you very much.
Now, let's start off by telling us what is the status of democracy in Tanzania as we speak?
Democracy is in decline. Since the last 4 years, the opposition parties are not allowed to organize, to conduct political activities. For those who are members of parliament, they are just allowed to operate within their constituencies, although there are a lot of stumbling blocks. Myself is an example. A few weeks ago, the police banned a rally in my constituency. A number of leaders of political parties are in court for different kind of cases. And we live in a situation where anytime you are in court, so long as you are opposition. So we are in really nose diving as far as democracy is concerned.
Now, as you are coming from Africa to the US, I read reports, very recent, we're talking less than 72 hours, that there are death threats against you. Who are the death threats from and for what reason, do you know?
Maybe I'll start with the second, with the reason. I wrote a letter to the World Bank to caution them about the loan they are going to give to Tanzania on education, because that loan is inherently discriminatory against the girls, schoolgirls who get pregnant. In accordance to the election manifesto by the ruling party, statements by various public leaders, and also with an example from the sister country, island of Zanzibar, the young girls are allowed, or were supposed to be allowed to go back to school after delivery. But President Magufuli has banned that. And the World Bank wanted to finance the education loan that did not address the issue of discrimination. So the ruling party, members of parliament, and supporters of the ruling party went to the floors of parliament, threatened that I should be killed because I'm not patriotic by stopping that loan. But I take the threats very seriously because we have an example for our colleague who was shot, Mr. Tundulisu, and he's now in Belgium in exile. So we take the threats very seriously. But also don't be surprised when I land back in the country to hear that I've been jailed, because the government uses money laundering offenses to jail the critics. So money laundering offenses are a disguised way of detention without trial. No. So don't be surprised if you hear that I'm arrested the moment I land in the country.
Yeah, because 2019, you were banned from traveling out of the country.
Yes, in June 2019, I was banned from traveling. Yes, I had to ask a permission from Speaker to travel during this trip that I'm here.
Now, let's talk about the 2020 elections. We're talking months. You are going to be holding a presidential parliamentary elections. What is the playing field like?
The playing field is not fair. That's why we are going around meeting partners of Tanzania in order to ask them to pressurize the government to make sure that the election is free and fair. The Electoral Commission is not independent, but also we have cases where the election was nullified. For example, in Zanzibar, the election was nullified, and the current government of Zanzibar is illegitimate government. And the last November 2019, there were civic elections in the country, and 96% of opposition candidates were barred from contesting. So we are worried that the country is going towards single-party system. That's why we are mobilizing the international community to pressurize the government of President Magufuli to make sure that we have a free, fair, and credible election in 2020.
So is the opposition united in terms of how they are going to mobilize this and how you're going to fight for the rights of Tanzanians? And are you planning to run for the presidency?
The circumstances in the country force us to unite because our biggest goal should be to remove President Magufuli and CCM from office so that we reorganize our country, we build Tanzania that is thriving, providing economic opportunities for the citizens, and making sure that we address the shortcomings in the criminal justice system in the country, whereby people are just arrested and being imprisoned without without completeness of the investigations. And so those circumstances force us to unite. So there is no way we'll face the election without being uniting. Will I run or not? It will depend on the decision of the parties in coalition. All
right, now you're talking of incarceration. Tell us about the status of the journalists like Kabendera who have been in jail. What is their status like?
Up to now, Eric is still in jail. Every time he goes to court, they say that the investigations are still continuing. We heard that he has applied for a plea again, a system whereby there are negotiations between the prosecutor and him, but he's still in jail, and many other human rights activists. Today, on the 5th of February, Tito Magoti, a lawyer from the Human Rights Association, and his colleague were brought to court, and the prosecution said investigations are continuing. And we'll see more of this if the international community will not come hard on Tanzania.
Wow, Mr. Kabwe, thank you very much for bringing us up to speed on what's going on in Tanzania. We hope for the best.
Thank you so much.
Right. Mr. Zitto Kabwe is a Tanzanian opposition politician and founder of the Alliance for Change and Transparency political party. Now, at least 490 people, the majority in mainland China, have died from the coronavirus. The total number of confirmed infections exceeds 24,000. There are about 150 confirmed cases in 23 other countries, including one death in the Philippines, the first outside of China. Now, there are growing concerns about coronavirus's impact on the global economy. VOA's Mariama Diallo has the details.
In Hong Kong and China, streets are empty and businesses closed with a stringent quarantine aimed at stopping the spread of the outbreak, which will likely have dire repercussions, says David Dollar from the Brookings Institution, a think tank in Washington, D.C.
You've got areas that produce about 2/3 of China's GDP have already extended their holidays for a couple more weeks. Migrant workers are not coming back to factories. So clearly, first quarter and almost certainly second quarter of 2020 will have very poor economic results.
Francis Loon, CEO of Hong Kong Geosecurities, warns the impact could ripple out from Asia.
Maybe the global economic growth will shrink by 0.05%.
Meanwhile, Li Zimin, a strawberry farmer in Zhejiang, which shares a border with Hubei province where the virus originated, says this time of year would usually be peak season. But because of the outbreak, his daily income has been gravely reduced. The 38-year-old has about 23 greenhouses spread over 1.5 acres of land in an area traditionally popular with strawberry growers and pickers.
I'm obviously feeling down about this, definitely a little dejected. But right now, in the face of this epidemic, it's not man-made, so there's nothing we can do about it. I just hope that this epidemic can be over quickly. That way, the strawberries can return to normal sales levels.
The outbreak has reached even the Chinese-ruled gambling hub of Macau, where casino operators on Tuesday were asked to close for 2 weeks. Macau's casinos are usually packed with Chinese high rollers, but this week are empty as people try to avoid contracting the Wuhan coronavirus. Mariama Diallo, VOA News.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, citizen scientists get snappy to monitor nature. We'll be right back.
Is about more than just sitting here and talking about women's issues. It's about listening to them
and bringing their opinions to the table and making sure their voices are heard.
Because our lived experiences, our stories, and our voices will help shape the next generation.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. Bunyoni means place of many little birds, and at this serene lake in southwestern Uganda, there are over 200 species. Its 29 islands are popular canoeing destinations for visitors. Foreign tourists often visit the lake after a trip to see the gorillas in Bwindi Impenetrable National Park, while domestic tourists come here to relax and have fun. Ugandan Tourist Board records show that there are at least 25 accommodation facilities now, compared to just 3 10 years ago. A Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities report states that in 2018, 1.5 million international tourists visited Uganda. The government is aiming to more than double that number in the next 5 years. Next up, her family wanted her to be a doctor or a lawyer. But on discovering as a teenager that she could contort her body in unusual ways, Ifeoma Amazobi decided this would be how she made a living. Contortionists are few and far between in Nigeria, where they're sometimes branded witches, dead bodies, sorcerers, or con artists by a suspicious public. The community put on a show titled Limberness in Lagos to bring recognition to their work and win respect for the strength and training it requires. The contortionists have also reassured their friends that they are not damaging their physical health with their performances and running the risk of huge medical bills. And finally, located at the foot of one of Armenia's mountain ranges is Cozy House, a small Hobbit-themed hotel that attracts hiking enthusiasts and Lord of the Rings fans alike. Hobbits are fictional characters created by English writer John Tolkien. They're best known for their love of comfort and good food, and they prefer living in small but snug underground houses built into the side of the hills. The hotel, which opened in 2019, has 6 houses built into the side of the Caucasus Mountains and can accommodate up to 16 guests. All houses are already booked for the entire summer. And that's what's trending today.
U.S. President Donald Trump gave the third State of the Union address of his presidency Tuesday night, just hours ahead of the close of his impeachment trial, when the Republican majority Senate is expected to acquit him of charges he abused the power of his office and obstructed Congress's efforts to investigate him. VOA's Catherine Gibson recaps the night from Capitol Hill.
Madam Speaker, the President of the United States.
The president starting his State of the Union in the 2020 election year with a reminder of his campaign promises in 2016.
3 years ago, we launched the Great American Comeback. Tonight, I stand before you to share the incredible results.
In the chamber where he was impeached by U.S. House Democrats less than 2 months ago, Trump made no mention of his Senate trial, but refused Speaker Pelosi's handshake and focused on his efforts to build the American economy.
If we hadn't reversed the failed economic policies of the previous administration, the world would not now be witnessing this great economic success.
Heading into the 2020 presidential election year, Trump has secured a personal best approval rating of 49% of the country. His speech focused on domestic policy initiatives, including infrastructure and health care, and an assurance the U.S. is addressing the coronavirus.
We are coordinating with the Chinese government and working closely together on the coronavirus outbreak in China. My administration will take all necessary steps to safeguard our citizens from this threat.
Trump did address several of his administration's key foreign policy priorities, including inviting special guest Venezuelan President Juan Guaido.
All Americans are united with the Venezuelan people in their righteous struggle for freedom. Socialism destroys nations, but always remember, freedom unifies the soul.
The recent U.S. drone killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani also earned a mention as Trump acknowledged protests in Iran and once again laid out the terms for diplomatic engagement.
The Iranian regime must abandon its pursuit of nuclear weapons, stop spreading terror, death, and destruction, and start working for the good of its own people. Because of our powerful sanctions, the Iranian economy is doing very, very poorly. We can help them make a very good and short-time recovery. It can all go very quickly, but perhaps they are too proud or too foolish to ask for that help. We are here. Let's see which road they choose. It is totally up to them.
Trump said his administration had found a new solution for peace in the Middle East.
Recognizing that all past attempts have failed, we must be determined and creative in order to stabilize the region and give millions of young people the chance to realize a better future.
Well, once again suggesting a withdrawal of the U.S. presence in Afghanistan.
I am not looking to kill hundreds of thousands of people in Afghanistan, many of them totally innocent. It is also not our function to serve other nations as law enforcement agencies.
But the president offered few opportunities for bipartisan cooperation.
Simply because he didn't mention impeachment didn't mean that every other aspect of the speech revealed his displeasure, his annoyance, and it was very clear watching the room that the feeling was mutual. You did not see Democrats applauding some points that could be national unity. At the same time, you did not see very much offering of working together, which is what a State of the Union is supposed to be.
Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan, a state that could play a key role in deciding the 2020 presidential election, gave the Democratic response.
Bullying people on Twitter doesn't fix bridges. It burns them.
But as Trump completed his speech, Speaker Pelosi ripped her copy of his remarks in half. A reminder that deeply partisan battles of impeachment are far from over. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Capitol Hill.
Joining me now to put the president's speech into perspective is VOA political expert and national correspondent Jim Malone. Jim, welcome back to Africa 54.
Nice to be with you.
A lot about the president talking of his achievements.
Yes.
But then some other issues trending today after that speech. A lot said about him snapping the handshake from Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi.
Yes.
And Pelosi tearing the speech.
Right. So what we're going to remember from this whole speech is not so much what was said by the president, but this body language that we saw. The president offering copies of the speech at the beginning. It wasn't clear if he was purposely snubbing Speaker Pelosi or he just didn't see that she wanted to shake his hand. And then, of course, at the end, the dramatic tearing up of the speech. Democrats were upset in some ways because they felt the president exaggerated some claims, perhaps even told falsehoods, but also was constantly hearkening back to the Obama administration to compare his administration and its achievements. The president does have a lot to crow about in terms of the economy, but we also saw the disparate partisan sort of camps on display in the speech.
And Jim, briefly, your take on immigration, where the president talks about an America that should be a sanctuary for law-abiding citizens and not a place for criminal aliens.
Well, it's a signature issue. He's going to push that in the campaign. President has had a good week. Poll ratings are going up. He's getting out of the impeachment mess, and the Democrats are in disarray as they try to choose someone to run against him in November.
Oh, a lot of talk. The highs and lows will be running around throughout the week. Jim, thank you very much for your perspective. VOA national correspondent Jim Malone. In today's tech report, a smartphone app that combines computer vision with a host of experts is empowering nature enthusiasts worldwide to document the organisms around them. Matt Debo explains.
This is a slime mold.
Kat Chang is an urban designer, but in her spare time, she likes to examine other life forms.
Ever since I was a little girl, I've been interested in the natural world. We're Native Hawaiian, our family, and my grandmother would take me around her yard. She would show us all the plants and how you use them. And later, when I was interested in learning about fungi, I didn't have anybody to help me with it. Someone suggested iNaturalist to me, and it's on your cell phone.
iNaturalist is a joint initiative of National Geographic and the California Academy of Sciences.
Essentially, people can take a photo of anything living, plant, animal, fungus, slime mold, put it on the website, and other people will identify it.
The app compares the image with those already in the database to begin the identification process. But ultimately, human experts weigh in.
The best part of it is there's a community of people that can also participate.
It's used by scientists to collect data and actually write papers, as well as just amateur people who are really interested in getting more involved and caring more about nature.
This time of year, I'm particularly looking for salamanders.
Oh, there he is, poking out of the wood I pulled up.
And I always like to see mammals. They're one of my favorites, and birds, of course. I have almost 55,000 observations. Yeah, I use it a lot.
iNaturalist has observations from every country in the world. Right now, I believe we have over 26 million observations and about 700,000 active users.
This collaboration across continents led recently to a surprising discovery in California, a type of giant sunfish whose normal habitat is thousands of miles to the south. An indication, perhaps, of a rapidly changing world. Matt Dibble for VOA News, San Francisco, California.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a good evening.